All right, so we're talking interior soundproofing today. So let's say maybe you have a loud street outside, a tenant on the backside of a wall, or maybe it's just a home office space where you want to work in peace and quiet. We've got a solution for that. Normally what we do is we look at dense packing those interior walls with cellulose insulation. We've got that exact project going on today, and we're going to head out to the job site and show you exactly how it's done. So we've been getting this call more and more the last few years. A lot of times it's maybe like a lawyer's office or some sort of an office setting where they need a meeting room secluded. A lot of times it's a tenant where you've got a bad tenant on one side, a really good tenant on the other side, and you want to save that good tenant. So normally what we look at doing is we end up drilling, patching the drywall on the inside of the house and dense packing those walls with cellulose insulation. And that's exactly what we're going to head to right now. So this is a tenant on the interior of the building. I don't believe there's any exterior walls at all involved in this project. We're pretty much just doing the inside walls. We're going to drill all the drywall, dense pack it with cellulose, put a plug in the drywall, mud it, sand it, make it ready for paint. The only thing the landlord's going to have to do is just repaint the thing. So this is a project you may be able to even handle yourself by renting the equipment and buying the supplies to make this happen. So when we get out to this house, really what we're going to do is we're probably going to lay some tarps down on the floor so we don't ruin any carpets. We're going to move the furniture toward the middle of the building so we can access the walls we've got to get to. We'll cover up anything with painter's plastic just so it doesn't get all dusty and everything. And then we'll get the guys start spotting where we've got to drill. Once it's all drilled, at that point, we're going to have one guy fill in the wall with cellulose. Once that's a full solid cavity, we've got a 3.5-inch barrier of cellulose there that's dense packed in there. Cellulose is really one of the best insulators for sound dampening purposes. We use it a ton on the exterior walls, and really what we found, it's the easiest one and the best sound dampening product out there to use on interior walls. Once we're all said and done, we move all the furniture back, clean up, and it'll be ready for paint for the homeowner. Tenant's fully aware of what we're doing when we get there, and let's grab all the guys. Let's get them all loaded up, and we'll head out to the job site. Cellulose insulation is made from a recycled newspaper product. So what they're doing is really grinding up old newspapers, treating it with borates, so it's fire retardant and rodent retardant. But really what this creates is a very strong sound dampening material. So when you think about, let's say, a fiberglass material, fiberglass is real loose. There's a lot of air inside it. It's allowing air to flow through it. Kind of similar to when they build fiberglass furnace filters, as where when this is installed, the cellulose is real tightly packed, kind of like what we see when we open the package itself. So when it's made from the factory and it's compressed into a brick and then shrink wrapped, that's kind of almost what we're doing when we dense pack these walls. So sound waves are really vibrations that travel through the air. So when you think about it, on one side of the wall, you've got that noise being created. It makes its way through that first piece of drywall fairly easily. Then you've got an open cavity that almost creates like an echoey chamber. And then that echo is going to follow through to the other side. So really, if we can build a barrier between those two to fill that chamber, not only is it going to stop it from coming through anywhere near as much, but it's also going to stop that echoey effect. So really what we see is more of a sound dampening instead of a soundproofing, but it does drop that noise drastically from when we started. So when the guys are dense packing cellulose, you can see Jay is dense packing the wall in a downward position first to build a barrier, and that's really going to give us a base to build off of when we go upward. So after that, we're going to send the hose up to the top plate, turn the machine on again, and it's going to kind of pack up at the top plate area. As he's pulling the hose down, it is filling 100%, and he can feel how much density he's getting to that. So when he gets to the hole itself and the hose is almost all the way out of the wall, at that point he knows that we've got a full solid barrier there. And if you really try to attempt this yourself, what you really have to pay attention to is your speeds and your pressures coming out of that machine. Certain machines that you may be able to rent are going to be pretty lightweight. You may not get a true solid dense pack on it, but if you rent a real machine that, you know, an actual insulation guy owns, you might have to turn that machine down to 3 or 4 instead of cranking it up to 5 or 6. And this job definitely goes much easier if you have at least 2 guys. Having one guy out in the truck loading the machine and one guy inside with the hose is kind of really the key to making this work at a regular pace. It's a pretty tough job when you've got to walk inside, work on a wall, dense pack it, then walk back outside, cut a bale open, drop it into the hopper, walk back inside. You know, there's a lot of leg work involved doing that, so it definitely helps having a helper with this one. Okay, so that cavity is 100% done. We know we've got a full solid barrier there. We're going to put a plug into that hole and put a single coat of mud on it. Once the mud is done, we'll let that set up for maybe 45 to an hour or so, and we'll go after it for a second coat, and by the time we're done, we'll have fully finished drywall. So each one of our trucks holds about 60 bales of cellulose. We always bring everything and then some. We're probably only going to use maybe 20 bales of cellulose on this job. I'll be able to give you a good idea of square footage and bag count and everything once we're all said and done here, just so you have a rough idea of how far a bag goes. The other thing you're going to need is a hole saw. You're going to need a hole saw to cut it. We use a 3-inch hole saw. You could get away with maybe a 2.5 at the smallest, but you're going to want something sizable where you can bend the hose to send it down the cavity. Really that and some drywall mud. And that's really all this one's going to take. Drywall mud, some plugs, a hole saw, and some bales of cellulose. Pretty minimal on the material list on this one. And let's also keep in mind that cellulose is a great product if you have a substrate or drywall on each side of the wall. If you have drywall off of one side or the other, you know, you could use fiberglass. It's not going to really give you a whole lot of sound dampening to it, but your next best choice would definitely be a mineral wool or some sort of a dense material that you could put in there. I've seen them, they came out with a blue jean material. Mineral wool is really kind of the go-to if you're not going to use cellulose or if your wall is open on one side. All right, so that wraps it up for the day. Guys sweat it a lot. It isn't easy work, but it's not difficult work either. You know, be prepared for, you know, a day or two worth of sweat, crouching up and down, drilling the walls, patching the walls, walking outside, you know, everything that's involved. It's not easy work. At the same time, it's not impossible. You know, those bales of cellulose that the guys are lifting are only maybe 25 pounds. So it's not terrible if you're used to lifting certain items. Thanks for watching. If you need any help with this, contact us at Woodmaker.